Welcome to the Teen Takes Arts podcast, also known as TAP, a Seattle-based youth podcast that focuses on empowering youth voices through the exploration of art. Here on this podcast, we share our favorite artistic influences by exploring their histories and cultural impacts, but not only by offering our perspective as teens. We interview artists, from emerging teen artists to ones well-established in their careers. I'm Blue.
And I'm Kaden. Today, we're talking about the legacy of the Riot Grrrl movement, its impacts, its flaws, and why it's still important for us to talk about today. This is part 2 of our episode on Riot Grrrl, and we'll be interviewing Allison Wolfe from Bratmobile, one of the most important original Riot Grrrl bands.
Born an identical twin in Memphis, Tennessee, Allison Wolfe was raised in an all-female household by a lesbian feminist mother who started the first women's health clinic in Olympia, Washington. She co-founded a punk fanzine, Girl Germs, an all-girl band, Bratmobile, and third-wave feminist punk movement, Riot Grrrl. Allison also sang in the bands Cold Cold Hearts, Deep Lust, Party Line, Cool Moms, Sex Stains, X Stains, Clicky Bitches, and Magic Witch Cookbox, along with initiating the non-profit music festival Ladyfest in 1999. She currently lives in Los Angeles, where she teaches music journalism at UCLA, hosts and co-produce a podcast, I'm in the Band, does freelance music journalism, public speaking, teaches ESL/EFL, DJing, and sings again in Bratmobile. A University of Southern California Annenberg Fellow, Allison completed a master's in specialized journalism in the arts with a focus on audio storytelling. She is also gradually working on a Riot Grrrl book and podcast.
Awesome. Okay.
Yes. Okay. So my first question, just to give us a little background, can you share your story, getting into music and your whole progress with that?
Yeah. So my name's Allison Wolfe, and I was in a band called, I am, I guess, in a band called Bratmobile. And I've been in other bands too, like Cold Cold Hearts, Deep Lust, Party Line, Cool Moms, Sex Stains, X Stains, Clicky Bitches, and now Bratmobile again. So yeah. Probably, I'm sure there's something I'm missing, but whatever. So yeah, I don't know. So anyways, I guess for me, I was I guess I took clarinet in grade school or something. And I was in a music group, an after school singing group called the Music Kids. And that was in Olympia, Washington. When we moved to Olympia when I was 10. Before that, we lived up in the Skagit Valley in Mount Vernon. And but yeah, my mom moved us to Olympia in 10. But anyways, so 5th grade. And so there was an after school music thing that our teacher, Mr. Long, kind of organized, and he just picked out some people to sing, and it was Music Kids, all one word with a K, big K in the middle, so Music Kids, I don't know, whatever. And we would just sing Neil Diamond and Jimmy Buffett songs and stuff, maybe Beatles if we were lucky, after school, and we would go perform on weekends. We had matching shirts but different colors that said Music Kids on the front. And we would go sing at I don't know, Kiwanis Club places or whatever, or old folks' homes or whatever. Oh, that's not nice to say. Anyways, senior citizen homes. And it was fun. But I think once I hit puberty, I was kind of your voice changes and you're just what is that? And then by middle school, I was playing clarinet. And then I switched to bass clarinet. That was because the other guys, I was first chair in clarinet, and then the guys behind me, they were challenging me for my chair. And I knew they were better than me. So this gives a lot away about my personality. But so I switched to a different instrument before they could challenge me. So nice. I switched to bass clarinet so I could remain first chair because there was no other. So that was cool. But then me and those guys, we joined forces and we were a clarinet quartet for I think all 3 years of middle school. We won the little trophies, so that was cool. I was holding down the low end, but so that was cool. So that's kind of my musical background. Oh, and then when I went to high school, I remember freshman year of high school, I went to the music band class. And there was another girl who was playing bass clarinet. And so it just sucked because then I had to be second chair anyway. So I was like,
Wow, it was all for nothing.
yeah, really, right. So no, it was cool, but then I started going out with this guy in band class who played saxophone, and he was 2 years older than me. He was a junior in high school when I was a freshman, and he was a letterman. He was on swim team or something. And I mean, my sister, like in middle school, we were kind of struggling, in ways, and like I say we because I have a twin sister, by the way, an identical twin. Her name's Cindy. So I think we just were pretty like not cool, in middle school. Like we were
I don't
like,
think anyone was.
yeah, that's true. You look back and you're like, everyone, even the popular people thought that they were not cool. But we were like, the weird kind of, I mean, I don't want to say poor because it's all relative, but not as well off kids from the weird broken home. My mom was divorced and lesbian, and I think we got scabies at one point, just like that kind of thing. So
Yeah.
not cool. And then we ended up being, I don't know, I think by high school, people kind of noticed us and paid attention to us. So it was like, ooh. So of course you just go out with the first upperclassman to ask you out. So I was like, oh, right, I got it made. And this guy has a car because my mom would never drive us anywhere. And I didn't know how to drive. And anyways, yeah. So I was like, all right. And he had money, he'd take me to dinner and pay for it and stuff like that. But he was really kind of old fashioned. Like his parents were from even a different generation. I think they're kind of older parents. And so it was kind of like leave it to Beaver over at his house. And it was cool for a while, whatever. But I think after a while, our worlds were just too different. Like my house was loud and crazy and feminist and like, everything was scrappy and dirty and whatever. So I think I just kind of like was like, well, whatever. And then I started realizing he was pretty controlling. And I think finally, like I know one time, like when he took me to out one night on a Friday night or something, and then he brought me home because he had to go to bed early because of swim team on the weekends. So I remember him dropping me home, and then my sister was waiting at home. It's like, God, you're finally home. Okay, there's a party, like, one neighborhood over. We're gonna walk over there. Been waiting for you to get back from dinner. So I was like, okay. So we went to the party, and then I'm sure I told him about it, or he heard I was at the party or whatever, because his friends were there. But he wasn't. And I remember him saying to me, he was mad. And I was like, why are you mad? I went to a party. I was like, I get it. You're probably bummed you couldn't go. And he was like, when I take you on a date and bring you home, you are in for the night. And I was, I know,
Wow.
right? I know. And I just, that blew my mind. I was just like, what? I don't get it. What do you mean? And I was like, but my sister was waiting for me, So I just had no idea what the hell he was talking about. And so it's just kind of stuff like that started kind of getting on my nerves. And I just couldn't conform. But anywho, I guess when we broke up, so he came over one weekend, my mom was gone, and I think I just was like, I gotta do it. I gotta break it off. Like I can't do it. Just wasn't feeling anymore. But also I just, I'm sure I didn't handle it well. I probably was just like, I quit you. No, that's what they say in the South. Did you know that? I quit you.
Oh, wow.
But so, yeah, but I just was like, well, I want, I gotta break up. I don't know what I said or why, but anyways. And so he was so mad. He was kind of yelling and stuff like, I was like, and then he left. And then my sister and our best friend were in my bedroom, which is really just kind of right next to us. They probably could hear everything. And Sarah, our best friend, she started laughing. But that's the thing, is she wasn't laughing like because she thought it was funny, but she hasn't had a nervous laugh. She always laughed, it was like a nervous thing. But it's like, what's going on? I was like, oh, we just broke up and stuff. And she's kind of nervous laughing, but like, what? And I guess in the meantime, he had walked back into the house, probably to just yell at me some more or say something else. And he heard that, me talking to them. And he was like, Allison, get back out here. So I went out there, and he was so mad. He held me by the collar or whatever up against the wall and was like, And
my God.
yeah, like physical. Yeah. And he was just like, don't you ever talk about me like that and make fun of me and whatever and blah, 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 blah. And I was just kind of like frozen, you know?
Mhm.
And then and then he dropped me and then he ran out, left again, stormed out, and he picked up a pot on the kitchen stove and threw it across the kitchen, and it put a hole in the wall
Oh my
of
God.
my mom's, the downstairs kitchen. And then I think the handle even broke off and went into the wall. Anyways, yeah. And we still kept the pot and cooked out of it. Who knows? But like, but yeah, it was kind of shocking. And my mom, I've told this story a lot, but so forgive me if you've heard it before, but my mom wasn't home, luckily, because she probably would have just kicked his ass for sure. And, but he probably also wouldn't have acted like that if she were around. But I don't know, something in me just clicked right then and there. And I was just shocked. And I think I didn't have the language or really the kind of insight to be like, oh, that's kind of like domestic violence or whatever. And that's sexist and all this kind of stuff. But in my mind, it was like, he's a jock and like some kind of like conservative-y, you know, Christian-y family type mainstream person. And I just can't hang with that anymore. So that is when I kind of dove into subcultures, you know, like punk and new wave first and then kind of punk, because I just was like, that's how I interpreted the whole thing, like jocks bad or whatever, you know, and then like other people good or something like that.
Yeah.
So I just kind of, you know, right away, I think I called up I had a new wave friend who kept trying to get me to go out and go to the mall with her where all these other wavers were hanging out. And then another one, my punk friend, Christina, anyways, who was like going to the punk club, trying to get me to hang out. So I just started hanging out with both of them and was going to the one new wave club, the surf club downtown, like every weekend, and, you know, getting and also discovering thrift shopping, which I'd never really done before. And that was really liberating, not just, you know, fashion wise, right? Because back then that was kind of how you found your people. I think these days there's a lot of people who, you know, dye their hair pink and whatever, and it doesn't necessarily mean they're into the same things. But back then it's more or less was, especially in a small town. That's how you find your people. So like, anyways, but so I would go to the new wave stuff and whatever and dress like, you know, thrift store. And we didn't have much money. So it was really all of a sudden I didn't have to wear like the same sweater over and over and over again. I discovered thrift stores. I'm like, oh my God, I can have this amazing stuff for like $1. I mean, I couldn't buy more than maybe one thing a week because I had to save my money for the new wave club or for a cup of coffee, bottomless coffee. Back then, every cafe, you got free refills. I just want to say to everyone in the Northwest that it used to be free refills everywhere and it's the best coffee, right? So,
yeah.
And coffee was not more than $1. So
can't even imagine that.
I know. So yeah. So we'd hang out for hours at diners and stuff like that. So anyway, so that's kind of how I got into alternative stuff and music and stuff like that. And then, you know, after, I don't know, maybe by my sophomore, junior year of high school, I was going to punk parties and punk shows. And yeah, it was cool. And a lot of it was actually not, you know, people always talk about the Seattle scene, but back then in the 80s, we had the dance ordinances that was, it was intense. I even wrote papers about it in high school. So, and I even wrote a speech in my debate class about it. But yeah, it was like, there was this group of parents in Seattle called Parents in Arms. They conservative jerks. They probably had goth kids who were dropping acid on Broadway. And they were just like, trying to keep their kids in jail and, you know, their personal hell jail. And they passed these ordinances that basically made it, you had to be 18 to go to a dance club. And that not only affected all the new wave dance clubs, but it also affected the punk clubs, you know, for having shows and bands and stuff like that. And the thing is, there wasn't even alcohol on the premises of these venues. It's not like you could even mistakenly serve someone a drink or anything like that. And in effect, it all got shut down. So now Olympia, that wasn't affected by any of that, but at the same time, it was so small that it was hard to keep clubs open because there probably just wasn't enough revenue, you know, or whatever. There was a Tropicana, but I don't think it lasted very long. And then there were some other like little things pop up, Evergreen State College stuff that would happen here and there. But so really, in the end, everyone ended up going to Community World Theater, which was in Tacoma. And Tacoma was kind of no man's land. Like you could just do whatever you want and no one cared. So this guy, Jim May, he had a club, Community World Theater. It was like an old kind of worn down theater. And he'd put all the shows on there and it was all ages. And all the Seattle people would come down to shows. Of course, all the Tacoma people were there in outlying areas. And then Olympia people would go up. And it was kind of a great convergence, you know. Nico Case worked the door. And,
oh, wow.
Yeah, it was cool. I remember that.
Yeah.
And like Nirvana would play and stuff sometimes. But now this was before Nirvana was called Nirvana. They used to be called Skid Row. I don't know if people realize that, but they were.
Yeah.
When I was in high school. And Melvins would play, and SNFU and DOA coming down from Canada. Probably Mecca Normal. No Means No. Yeah, all that. Who else? I don't know. Lots of local bands too. Like, I don't know who, whatever.
Yeah. That's cool.
Funny named band. Oh, Noxious Fumes. Yes. Okay. So
Yeah,
anyway, do you know about them? Oh.
No, I don't. But I was going to say, like, my parents both like grew up in Seattle, so they always tell me about how lucky I am to get to go to shows now.
Oh, yeah. Seriously.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I mean, we still would go in high school. We'd go up to Seattle sometimes, but we would we would drop acid and hang out on Broadway, but with no club to hang out at. So I guess maybe we were proving the point, but whatever. The thing is, you don't have to go to a club to get your acid.
Yeah.
So you could just hang out on Broadway, which is probably what the kids kept doing. So, but yeah, it's better to give kids something to do and a creative thing to do. But so I went to all the shows and it was fun, but it was, I still couldn't really see myself on stage, you know? I mean, there were some women in bands, like Toby Vale was always in bands. She was in an all-girl band called Doris. She was in the Go Team, not the one that maybe people have heard of, but the Olympia one. And Donna Drash was playing in bands and stuff. Danger Mouse was one of her bands. So you kind of saw that a little bit here and there, but still, those to me they were like tough, cool girls, and I was like wimpy and nerdy and not cool in my mind. So, and you know, I listened to a lot of new wave bands growing up too, of girls like, you know, B-52s and Joan Jett, Bow Wow Wow, the Go-Go's, Missing Persons, all this stuff. And that all kind of influenced me, but it still didn't necessarily make me feel like I could do it too, because they were mainstream, you know, they were big stars to me. But it wasn't until the summer of '89 when after I'd graduated from high school, I just graduated and went to Thailand for a year. I was an exchange student. Probably I needed some growing up to do. So I came back and I guess I was more grown up. But I started just hanging out downtown all the time because I think I had like 4 minimum wage jobs that summer. It was, you know, so I was just, and they were all pretty much downtown. So I was just downtown all the time. So, and some girlfriends of mine had a punk house. And so I'd just go hang out over there after my work and we'd just hang around or go to shows and stuff. But I started seeing this girl around town who looked like Tank Girl, and she'd be on the bus, always snarling. And it was Kathleen Hanna. And she had moved to Olympia to go to Evergreen State College. And so, I mean, I kind of admired her or was scared of her or whatever from afar. But she started a venue called Reco Muse in Olympia, and they started having shows. It was supposed to be an art gallery, but I just went there for punk rock shows. And one time I was downtown at night walking by on a weeknight, and I heard noise coming out of Reco Muse, and I was like, oh, I didn't know there was a show tonight. And I peeked in, and Kathleen was, I think, maybe practicing with her band, which was called Viva Knievel. And she was just screaming at the top of her lungs, you know, and like just red face, everything, and just letting it all hang out. She was terrifying. But it was awesome. And it made a huge impression on me where I was like, wow, this girl just goes for it. And she's not trying to sit pretty or whatever. And she's very pretty, but she wasn't trying to be pretty, you know, and all this stuff. I was like, oh, cool. And then another time I went by there and there was a show, this band Calamity Jane. They were an all-girl band who all went to Evergreen at the time. But I think they're from Oregon, from Ashland, Oregon originally. But anyways, they were kind of a snarly grunge era band, and they were playing a show, and I went and saw them. And I think that made an impression on me too, where it's like, okay, there's all these girls, I see them hanging around, they're playing, you know, they're just playing. That's cool. And then of course, bands like Beat Happening or whatever, who were very stripped down, or any of the K Records acts at the time, super DIY. We're just recording a song in our kitchen about whatever, you know, and it's really stripped down. That kind of stuff started making me think too, oh, maybe I could do this too. But I think I needed to leave. Like I needed to get out of Olympia and not feel like intimidated or something. So I went to University of Oregon in Eugene to go to school. And I met Molly Newman, who was from Washington, D.C. in the dorms. We were neighbors in the dorms. And I first met her when she was like on the payphone in the hall. We all had just one payphone on each floor in the hall. And she was screaming and breaking up with this guy or something on the phone. I was talking East Coast girl, and she scared me too. But, you know, I always like end up like gravitating towards those people. So we became fast friends, and she was cool. She was like really like mature for her age. She was an only child and I was a twin, so we're kind of opposites in ways. I don't know why. I was very immature. I'm still immature for my age. It's kind of weird, but she's mature, more mature than me. And so she kind of like really influenced me to be more political and politicized in a lot of ways, in a more kind of grand scheme of things. Whereas I kind of knew about the politics of my mom and stuff. So my mother, I didn't mention this, but my mother, Pat Shively, she started the first women's health clinic in Olympia, Washington. And that's why we moved to Olympia. And she was like an out lesbian feminist, you know, reproductive rights. She stood up for, you know, the underdog always. And like, she had to go to bat for her patients a lot against, you know, this kind of conservative atmosphere. And yeah, so we had that influence, you know. And so I knew about those politics, but you know, when you grow up with it, you take it for granted kind of.
Yeah.
Like, oh, mom, you know, abortions are gonna get outlawed. Okay. You know, seriously. Seriously, I thought this, you know, and she'd be like, don't you turn your back. Don't let your guard down. They'll take it away the minute they can. And look what's happened. So, yeah. So she's right. So I guess it was sort of took, you know, you have to find your own way, really, basically, into your politics and your thing. So, and your feminism. So I think we got really interested in feminist stuff, but also through like Bikini Kill. So Bikini Kill was starting as well. And we would go up to Olympia every now, like once a month or so, to hang out because Eugene was pretty boring. And we, you know, got to talking a lot with Kathleen and Toby, who really took us under their wing. And they really encouraged us to make a fanzine or start a band or radio show or whatever. And so we did slowly. We did the fanzine first. Well, I think we named our band first, but we didn't really have a band. We were a fake band for a while. So it was Bratmobile, but took probably at least a year before we actually did anything. And it was only we had to get nudged to do it as well. So, yeah, so I don't know. And also, I think there were some people in the like kind of student centers and student union groups on campus too. One person who we're still friends with, Eric Ward, and he was in like the African American student union group, and he was going to all like the few punk shows that were happening in Eugene. Of course, we'd all see each other there, and yeah, he's really awesome too, and still in our lives. Yeah, so. So, and it was a big influence on us, you know, and so we were kind of only taking social justice classes. So I think at some point we realized, or I realized at least, I loved it there, but I wasn't going to graduate at that rate because I refused to take any classes that didn't interest me. So,
yeah.
So I was
like
all right. Yeah, I wasn't going to do the requirements. So it's like, okay, but Evergreen was a little bit more loosey-goosey. So you could kind of, you know, get away with more, I suppose. But honestly, I think I liked it better at U of O in a way. I do better in a structured environment. Although I think Evergreen is great, it just was a little harder for me because I don't have a lot of self-discipline. So
yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah. So I don't know. So I think that those are the kind of things that got me. You know, I also really missed Olympia, and I missed a lot of that DIY music stuff. I guess I brought that to the table in me and Molly's kind of union, the DIY punky aspect of things. So we kind of fused it all together and started Bratmobile in theory for a while. And then like at the end of 1990, I think Calvin Johnson from K Records and Beat Happening, he asked us to come play a show at North Shore Surf Club, which is the place I used to hang out as a freshman in high school. Yeah, he's like, want to come play a show with Bikini Kill and Sun Velvet Sidewalk? It's on Valentine's Day, 1991. And we were like, what? And we're like, we're not in a band. We don't have any song. What are you talking about? And he's like, you guys come up here like once a month bragging about your band. You know, he's like, so you're going to play a show. And we just were like, nah. But we're okay. He called our bluff. So we had to do it. Yeah. So then we just borrowed, like, there was this band called Oswald 50 in Eugene, Oregon. This guy, Robert Christie, loaned us the keys to their practice space so we could use our equipment and stuff like that. And yeah, he helped us out. So we wrote some things that I guess we thought might be songs. We weren't quite sure. And there's nothing like just going to that first show. Molly had to buy a car to get us there out of the newspaper, I think like for $400. I don't know. I can't believe it. But it was awesome. Like, even though we had no idea what the hell we were doing, we got on stage. And it's just that feeling once you're up there where you're like, oh my God, are we a band? Are these songs? Are they really songs? Like, I don't know, because they were kind of like sing-songy. Molly switched between drums and guitar. It was just me and Molly at first. And I sang, I guess I tried to play guitar on a song or two, but we had everyone cheering us on, you know, like we had all of Bikini Kill up front cheering, and everyone was just so supportive that, I don't know, it was awesome. I don't know if we could have done it. Like, honestly, if any of the circumstances had been different, I wonder if we would have done it. But just all these things kind of lined up. And then, you know, and then the girls took over Olympia. I mean, I think girls have always kind of taken over Olympia, but so.
That's cool. Yeah, I'm going to see Bikini Kill in Olympia this Saturday. I'm really excited.
Oh, awesome. Is that the benefit show they're doing? Or is it? Yeah, that's awesome. I'm so happy they're doing that. Great.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. It's going to be so fun. Yeah. I mean, you know, I'll always love them, but I kind of think they sound better than ever. It's really impressive. It's awesome. Yeah. It's great. They're great. So.
Yeah. Another question I have for you is about, like, I think Riot Grrrl has kind of become like super popular, like with people my age and like the younger like generation. So I was wondering like what you thought of that, and like why do you think it like appeals so much to like younger people now? I
don't know. Well, I think there is. I think with this kind of everyone's so saturated in like digital media and social media and all that kind of stuff. I do think there's a little bit of a kind of hearkening to the past. Maybe I don't want to say it's nostalgic because it's not like the young people even were alive before that necessarily. But I feel like there is this kind of people looking towards sort of like tangible things or something now. And so I think sometimes they're also looking to the times of that, you know.
Mhm.
I don't know. But I think also like, you know, as much as things change, they stay the same. And I mean, in a way, you think progress is not linear, I guess. So you think things will be getting better as time goes on, but a lot of things are getting worse, you know? And I mean, we are in like late stage capitalism, honestly. And it's like,
Yeah.
capitalism is making the world worse and worse and worse and worse. And it's just the gap between rich and poor is getting bigger and bigger and bigger. And like, yeah, and it's like this whole, and there's people trying to change the entire language of, you know, between the privileged and oppressed, and there's all this double speak going on and people pretending it's not happening, you know, but at the same time, look, yeah, Roe v. Wade, it's been overturned. It's terrifying, really. So I feel like a lot of young people, and like in this case, you know, young people who, well, I think it's like all women and LGBTQ and various gendered people and everything. You know, if you are not in the mainstream or the dominant culture or whatever, yeah, you're having a hard time. And I mean, I think some things are easier, but I don't know. I'm just going on, but I think people are kind of reaching for something that maybe can kind of speak to them, but I think people are kind of making it their own. Like, even if people say they're Riot Grrrl or aligned with that or interested in that, I still think it's like it's updated form, and it needs and needed to be updated, and it's more intersectional now, and also less gendered. I mean, we were so kind of rigidly gendered in a lot of ways that, you know, things that really need to change, you know. So I don't know. I'm happy that it could have been inspiring to anyone and of value to anyone, for as many flaws as it had, and we all have and had. So
Yeah, I definitely agree. I think it's really cool how people are like changing it and making it better and making it more like for the time. Like it's like it's like new and it's good. Yeah.
And I mean, it's not to say that we weren't having these conversations back then, because that's another thing too, is just like Kathleen Hanna, for example, very much ahead of her time, was talking about non-binary and non-binary. She was talking about all this stuff back then, and, you know, would engage us in these conversations. And, you know, I don't know. And also just like, you know, talking about like, okay, is it white, middle class privilege and stuff like that? You know, I think it's in that kind of idea of white feminism or white rich people feminism or whatever. Yeah. So it's not that we weren't discussing these things, but still, it's like, I think community needs to be based on something beyond just those people, you know, like that group of people or whatever. So yeah.
I was wondering, like, when you look back on Riot Grrrl, like, what are the things you like? What are the things what are the things that you reflect on, and like what resonates with you now, like looking back on like that, and especially like going back to Bratmobile and things like that?
Oh yeah, it's funny you ask, because I mean, now that we've announced we're playing some shows coming up again, and this happened last summer too, or last spring or whatever, when I had to prep for the shows last summer. You know, you have to listen to these songs from, I don't know, 30 years ago or whatever. And I'll be like, oh, can I sing it? Will it still hold meaning for me, these lyrics? And sometimes I wonder. But, you know, sadly, a lot of the stuff I listen to, I'm like, I still feel the same a lot of times, you know? I mean, I tended to sing more about things like, how is a personal political kind of, you know, more personal angle and stuff. Like, how do we treat each other in our communities or everyday lives that is like sexist or whatever. And So anyways, so I still see a lot of these dynamics in personal relationships and relations and stuff like that. So sometimes I'm like, oh man. They also make me laugh a little because a lot of my songwriting was a little do as I say and not as I do or did. Like, you know, this is what I wish I would have said to this guy or whatever, or this is what I wish I would have done or what I wish would have happened. So it's kind of like a wishful thing. But also trying to kind of build self-esteem in myself and other women, you know, just like, hey, we're in this together a bit, you know, like maybe we can, here's a song for you. Maybe you felt like this before or something. I don't know. I felt like this. Yeah.
Yeah, I like that.
Yeah. So I don't know. I mean, so I guess I see it as still relevant, but also I think a big part of that is the DIY ethic of things. I mean, punk. So I think going against the mainstream system is really important. And I think we can all get something out of punk from that.
Yeah,
as well.
For sure.
You know?
For sure.
And that whole idea of like, if you don't see yourself reflected in mainstream media or wherever, like, you got to create it yourself. We have to create our own culture or our own communities, our own culture, our own entertainment and stuff like that. And it's like, find that intersection and build from there, you know, and we'll find our people and build together and stuff like that. So,
yeah, that's cool.
Right. Yeah.
I like that.
So those tenets, I think, were in Riot Grrrl. And, you know, Riot Grrrl really was like, how can I make feminism, update feminism to speak to like young, well, not just young, but yeah, actually to young girls, but also a sex worker positive feminism. But also one that acknowledges the lives of teen girls, you know, and but also to make our punk rock worlds more feminist. You know, like we were getting kind of injured at shows and stuff like that. And there was such a macho thing in grunge. Okay, yeah, it's still macho. It just has long hair and flannel now. But yeah, so those were some of our goals, you know, to try to kind of find this intersection, punk and feminism.
Yeah, I think that's definitely like what resonates with me at least. And I think a lot of people my age who are like getting into Riot Grrrl now.
Yeah. Cool.
So the Zoom is running out of time, so I don't want you to get cut off.
Oh, okay.
So I guess we'll have to wrap up. No worries. I just don't want to like miss anything. So I guess that'll be my last question.
That's all we have for this episode. Thank you for joining us. We hope you enjoyed this episode and you learned something about Riot Grrrl. A special thanks to everyone behind the scenes who helped make this happen, especially the Vera Project for the recording space, Ground Zero Radio for their help in producing Tap, and Totem Star recording artist Lily Indigo for the music you heard at the beginning of this episode. And thank you to our interviewee, Allison Wolfe, for taking the time to talk to us. Join us next month when we talk about another artistic inspiration of one of the Tap hosts. That's all. Bye-bye.